The grand hall of the Scifi imperial palace was silent, despite being filled with high-ranking nobles and military officers. The air was thick with tension as King Vorthek, ruler of the Scifi Empire, sat upon his massive stone throne. His sharp golden eyes flickered between the human ambassador Daniel Carter and the woman standing beside him, his own daughter, Princess Silvera. Silvera's deep blue skin was almost pale from the realization of what was happening. Her father had traded her away, not to an alien warlord, not to a noble of their kind, but to the humans. The Scifi had long looked down upon humanity, considering them a primitive young race. But now, the great empire was crumbling under constant war, their fleets losing battles, their technology no longer superior. And so, Vorthek had done the unthinkable. He had offered his daughter as a diplomatic exchange, hoping to secure peace. Silvera clenched her fists. "Father, you cannot be serious," she whispered in their native tongue. Vorthek did not look at her. His voice was firm. "The decision is made." Ambassador Carter, dressed in a formal Earth uniform, remained calm. He knew that Scifi viewed this as a bargain. But for humanity, this was something else entirely. Humans did not trade people. They protected them. But he wouldn't say that just yet. "This agreement benefits both our species," Carter said. "The princess will live among us, learn our ways, and serve as a bridge between our people." The words felt hollow to Silvera. She wasn't a bridge. She was a bargaining chip, handed over to an enemy. King Vorthek turned toward Carter. "She is yours now." Two Scifi guards stepped forward, their silver armor gleaming under the massive chandelier's light. They escorted Silvera toward the humans, toward the unknown. She held her head high, refusing to show weakness. As she passed her father, she whispered, "You will regret this." Vorthek remained silent. The journey to Earth, the human ship, Horizon's Dawn, was nothing like the grand warships of the Scifi Empire. It lacked the smooth organic curves of her people's vessels, instead built with hard angles and reinforced plating. Silvera expected it to be crude and inefficient. She was wrong. Inside, the ship was efficiently designed, comfortable, and surprisingly advanced. The air smelled cleaner than she had expected, and the artificial gravity was stable. A human officer, Commander Jason Holt, greeted her. He had sharp eyes, a steady voice, and a posture of confidence, not arrogance, but confidence. He was not afraid of her. "Princess Silvera," he said, "I'll be overseeing your transition to life on Earth." She studied him. "You do not bow." He raised an eyebrow. "Humans don't bow to royalty." For the first time, she felt a flicker of unease. The Scifi ruled through power and bloodlines. The humans, they seemed to rule through will. She was taken to her quarters, spacious but secure. She was not a prisoner, but she was not free either. A voice in her head whispered, "They do not trust me." That was fine. She didn't trust them either. A king's growing doubt. Back on the Scifi homeworld, Vorthek sat alone in his chambers. The moment the human ship left, a heavy weight settled on his chest. He had done what he thought was necessary. But as he stared at the holographic map of the galaxy, he realized something troubling. The humans had agreed too easily. A species that had once been viewed as weak upstarts was now expanding rapidly, winning wars they shouldn't have been able to win. Their fleets were smaller but deadlier, their technology advancing at a terrifying rate. And now, they had his daughter. What if they were not treating her as a mere diplomat? What if they were teaching her, influencing her, changing her? He clenched his jaw. Had he just handed humanity something far more valuable than he realized? Silvera's first glimpse of humanity. As Horizon's Dawn approached Earth, Silvera stood near the viewing window, watching the planet grow larger. She had heard about it before. A world of countless climates, filled with billions of humans, thriving despite all odds. She refused to admit it, but she was curious. The ship landed at a sprawling facility, guarded yet open. Human officers and scientists gathered, watching her not with fear, but with interest. Dr. Evelyn Hayes, a human scientist, approached with a warm smile. "Welcome to Earth, Princess." Silvera didn't respond. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. But as she stepped onto the surface of the planet, a strange thought entered her mind. What if this place is not what I expected? She pushed it away. She would not be fooled by human kindness. Yet, deep inside, something had already begun to change. Silvera stepped off the horizon's dawn, her boots touching the Earth's soil for the first time. The air was different, richer, warmer, filled with scents she didn't recognize. The cool breeze brushed against her face, and the sky above was a deeper shade of blue than she had imagined. She had expected something more primitive. The way that Scifi spoke about humans made them seem like barbarians, yet the sprawling city beyond the landing site told a different story. Towering buildings stood alongside lush green spaces, and vehicles moved effortlessly through the sky and streets. Her violet eyes flickered toward the human officials waiting to receive her. One of them, a woman in a white coat, stepped forward. "Welcome to Earth, Princess," she said with a polite smile. "I am Dr. Evelyn Hayes. I'll be one of your cultural advisors during your stay." Silvera said nothing. She had no intention of being tamed by humans. Commander Jason Holt, the human who had greeted her on the ship, stood nearby, watching her with the same calm intensity as before. He had the stance of a soldier, but not one who sought war. "Your quarters have been prepared," Holt said. "Follow me." She hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then, with her head held high, she walked forward, a place she did not expect. Silvera had imagined a prison cell or a cold, steel chamber. Instead, she was taken to a spacious residence within a secured section of the city. The building had large glass windows, allowing her to see the world outside. The interior was decorated with simple yet elegant furnishings, designed for both comfort and functionality. A holographic console displayed information about Earth's culture, history, and languages. A small doorway led to a balcony overlooking the human park, where people walked, talked, and laughed. Children played, chasing one another with joyful screams. She turned to Holt. "You do not keep me in a cage." He raised an eyebrow. "We don't treat guests like prisoners." She scoffed. "I am not a guest. I was traded." Holt's expression did not change. "Then consider this a chance to decide for yourself what that trade truly means." She said nothing, but something about his words unsettled her. The first encounter with human culture. The next day, Dr. Hayes introduced her to Earth's history, technology, and people. She showed Silvera how humans had evolved, survived countless wars, and thrived despite their flaws. They were not the perfect, disciplined warriors of the Scifi Empire, but they were something else. Adaptive, resilient, unpredictable. "They make mistakes," Silvera noted, watching a human child fall while running. Dr. Hayes nodded. "Yes, but they learned from them." The child got back up, laughed, and continued playing. Silvera felt something she couldn't name. The king's growing fear. Meanwhile, on the Scifi homeworld, King Vorthak sat in his war chamber, staring at reports from his spies. The humans were growing stronger. They had once been scattered tribes, but now they were a force expanding beyond their homeworld, building alliances, developing weapons that even Scifi engineers struggled to understand. And worse, Silvera was still there, living among them. The thought unsettled him. She was supposed to resist, to remain ex-Scifi, but the reports told him she had begun to listen to the humans, to observe them. Had he given the humans a key to understanding his people? He clenched his fists. He had to do something. A lesson in strength. Back on Earth, Silvera was taken to a military training facility. She had always believed that humans were weaker than the Scifi, but as she watched them train, spar, and strategize, she realized something. They did not fight like her people, but they fought with something more dangerous than brute strength. determination. One human soldier was knocked down during a sparring match. Silvera expected him to surrender. Instead, he got up, bloody but smiling. "Again," he said. "Again. And again." She had seen Scifi warriors fight, but they were trained for perfection. If they failed, they were replaced. Humans, however, saw failure as a lesson, not a weakness. For the first time, she began to understand why her father feared them. A human's selflessness. One night, as she walked near the balcony, she saw a human soldier giving food to a street dog. Silvera frowned. "That creature is weak." Holt, who stood beside her, smirked. "Humans don't just protect the strong. We protect those who need it." She looked at him, something shifting in her chest. "We're humans, truly different." The king's desperate move. In the shadows of the Scifi war chamber, King Vorthak made his decision. He could not let his daughter stay among humans any longer. If she truly understood them, if she became one of them, it would mean the end of Scifi dominance. His next words were final. "Send the retrieval team." Silvera stood on the balcony of her human residence, staring at the bright lights of the city below. It had been several days since her arrival, and each day had been a challenge to everything she had believed. She had expected weakness, yet she had seen strength in resilience. She had expected barbarism, yet she had seen kindness without expectation. And worst of all, she had expected fear, yet these humans, they did not fear her. Behind her, Commander Jason Holt stood, arms crossed. "You seem lost in thought." Silvera turned slightly, her violet eyes unreadable. "Your people confuse me." Holt smirked. "Good. That means you're paying attention." She frowned but didn't argue. He was right. Her father had warned her about humans, told her they were unpredictable, that they used deception to rise in power. But here, she had seen nothing but honesty, not the kind that came from duty, but from something deeper. They did not obey her because she was a princess. They treated her as an equal, something that both intrigued and unsettled her. Little did she know, far away, her father was growing desperate. A king's desperation. On that Scifi homeworld, King Vorthak paced inside his war chamber. The large holographic screen in front of him displayed an image of Earth, and next to it, a report about Silvera's stay among humans. His advisors stood silently, waiting for his command. "She has been there too long," Vorthak muttered, more to himself than anyone else. One of his generals stepped forward. "We have received intelligence that she is adapting to their way of life, if she continues to stay there." "I know." Vorthak's jaw tightened. At first, he had believed this trade would be a victory for his people. He thought he had outmaneuvered humanity, using his own daughter as a diplomatic tool to buy time for his empire's recovery. But now he saw the truth. He had given them something far more valuable. Silvera was not just a princess. She was a symbol, a warrior, a leader. If she learned to understand humans, she could become the bridge between their species, and a bridge could become an alliance. Vorthak could not allow that. His golden eyes darkened as he gave his next command. "Send a retrieval team," he ordered. "Bring her back." A sudden change. Silvera sat in the Earth Cultural Research Center, watching as Dr. Evelyn Hayes explained another piece of human history. This time, it was about how humans had survived against impossible odds, against nature, against each other, against their own weaknesses. She listened in silence, processing every word. Her people valued perfection. They believed weakness should be eliminated. But humans? They embraced imperfection and grew stronger because of it. She was beginning to wonder, who was truly superior? But before she could voice her thoughts, a sharp beeping sound filled the air. An alarm. Holt's communicator buzzed. His face hardened. "We have a situation." Silvera stood. What kind of situation? Holt's sharp gaze met hers. "Your people are here, and they're not here to talk." The attack begins. Outside, the sky darkened as Scifi stealth ships broke through Earth's atmosphere. evading defense systems. Soldiers in dark silver armor landed in a secure formation, their weapons glowing with energy. Their leader, Commander Rathos, stepped forward, eyes scanning the human compound. Locate the princess. Eliminate any resistance. The human military was already prepared. Within moments, soldiers in tactical gear took defensive positions, aiming advanced railguns at the intruders. The Scifi expected an easy mission. What they got was an immediate counterattack. Bullets, energy blasts, and strategic explosives filled the battlefield as humans fought back with deadly precision. The moment of choice. Scifi stood between Dr. Hayes and Holt, her heart pounding as explosions shook the facility. She had trained as a warrior. She knew that Scifi battle formations, their tactics. Her father had sent them to forcefully take her back. Holt looked at her. We need to get you out of here. Scifi clenched her fists. I am not running. She turned toward the battle, watching as humans and Scifi fought. Her people had come for her, but she no longer knew if they were truly her people anymore. In that moment, she realized something terrifying. She had a choice. Go back to her father, to the empire that saw her as a tool, or stay with the humans, who treated her as something more. Her decision would change everything. A king's growing regret. Back on his throne, King Vorthak waited for news. He expected to hear that his daughter had been retrieved, that his mistake had been corrected. Instead, he received a transmission. A human general appeared on the screen, his expression unreadable. The princess stays with us. The connection cut off. Vorthak's fingers dug into the stone of his throne. His worst fear had come true. He had not just lost his daughter. He had given the humans an ally. And now he regretted it. The air smelled of smoke and ozone, the scent of energy weapons mixing with the faint metallic tang of human gunfire. The once peaceful human research center had turned into a battlefield. Scifi stood at the edge of the chaos, watching as humans and Scifi clashed in combat. Her people, elite warriors, highly trained, skilled in close combat, moved with swift precision. They used their plasma blades and energy rifles to cut down resistance. But the humans, they did not fight like her people. They fought with tactical precision, adaptability, and something even more dangerous, determination. Each time a soldier fell, another took their place. When one formation was broken, they regrouped and counterattacked. They were smaller, weaker, yet they fought like beasts backed into a corner. Fierce, relentless, unyielding. Scifi's heart pounded. Who were the real warriors here? A battle of wills. Commander Jason Holt was at the center of the firefight, his assault rifle glowing from repeated energy discharge. His soldiers had taken cover behind the reinforced barricades, holding back the Scifi forces with deadly accuracy. Fall back to defensive positions. Holt shouted into his communicator. Keep them from reaching the inner compound. His men responded without hesitation. They knew they were outmatched in strength, but not in strategy. Across the battlefield, Commander Rathos, the leader of the Scifi retrieval team, observed the humans with growing frustration. They were supposed to break easily, to surrender when faced with superior firepower. But instead, they resisted. They fought back. Scifi saw it too. Her people were beginning to hesitate, not because they were losing, but because they were realizing what kind of enemy they had underestimated. She knew Scifi culture. Her father always said, "A warrior's strength is measured not by their power, but by their will to stand when all hope is lost." Yet here, it was the humans who stood, bleeding but unbroken, her hands curled into fists. A choice that cannot be undone. Dr. Evelyn Hayes pulled at Scifi's arm. "We have to go. They'll try to capture you." Scifi's mind was racing. If she went back now, she would be a tool, a pawn in her father's plans. But if she stayed, would she be turning her back on her people? Her father's words echoed in her mind, but another voice was louder now. the voice of her own heart. Holt's voice broke through her thoughts. "Princess, if you stay here, you'll be making a choice you can't take back." She looked at him. Stay or go. The choice was hers, and for the first time in her life, she chose for herself. The turning point. Silvera stepped forward, toward the battlefield, toward the humans. Holt's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" She turned her gaze to him. "Fighting for those who fight for me." Without waiting for a response, she drew her Xelvani energy blade, the weapon humming to life in her grip. Then, with lightning-fast speed, she charged. She caught Commander Rathos off guard, blocking his energy rifle with her blade. "Princess," Rathos growled, disbelief in his eyes. "You fight against your own kind." She held her ground. "No," she said, "I fight for those who stand by me." And then she struck. The battle shifted instantly. Seeing their own princess turn against them, the Xelvani soldiers hesitated. Doubt crept into their minds. The humans seized the moment. Holt barked an order. "Push them back. Take advantage of their confusion." The tide of battle shifted. The Xelvani forces, once confident in their victory, began retreating, unable to fight both humans and their own princess. Commander Rathos gritted his teeth. He was not trained for this kind of fight, a battle where honor and duty clashed in the worst way. He made the call. "Fall back. Get to the extraction point." The Xelvani soldiers vanished into the night, their mission a failure. The battle was over. But something far bigger had just begun. The aftermath. Silvera stood in the wreckage of the battlefield, breathing heavily. Her hands were stained with choices she had never thought she'd make. The humans had won, but it was not just their victory. It was hers too. Holt walked up to her, his expression unreadable. "You realize what you've done, right?" he asked. She nodded. "I do." She had chosen humanity over her own people. There was no going back now. Dr. Hayes placed a hand on Silvera's shoulder. "You didn't just choose to stay. You chose a future that's different from what was planned for you." Silvera's chest felt heavy, but for the first time, it was not with fear, but with certainty. She had made her own choice, and now she would face whatever came next. The king's realization. Back in the Xelvani palace, King Vorthek sat in silence. The retrieval team had failed. His daughter had betrayed her people, or had she simply found something worth fighting for? For the first time, the mighty king of the Xelvani felt powerless, because this was no longer his game to control. His daughter was no longer his pawn. And the humans. They had just won something far greater than a battle. The moonlight cast long shadows over the ruined battlefield. The aftermath of the battle lay scattered. Discarded weapons, fallen soldiers, and the wreckage of once pristine technology. The quiet that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of what had just transpired. Silvera stood alone in the center of the battlefield, her Xelvani blade still humming softly in her hand. Her body was sore, her mind tired, but she felt a strange sense of clarity. She had made her choice, and it had cost her everything. The humans had celebrated their victory, but they were still wary. They had won the battle, but what would happen now? Would they trust her fully after what she had done? Could they? Could she? A figure approached her, moving through the smoke-filled air. It was Commander Jason Holt, his face a mixture of admiration and concern. "You did it," he said quietly, his voice rough from the battle. "You gave us the edge we needed." Silvera nodded, but her mind was far from the battle's outcome. "I didn't do it for you, Commander. I did it for myself. For what's right." Holt looked at her closely, his eyes softening. "That's the same thing in the end." He paused. "You made a decision today, Princess, but it's not over. You know that, right?" Silvera met his gaze, her heart racing. It wasn't over. No, the battle was just the beginning. Now she had to deal with the consequences. A kingdom in turmoil. Back on the Xelvani homeworld, King Vorthek stood alone in his war chamber, staring out of the large glass window. Below, his empire sprawled in all its once glorious grandeur. The Exelvani had ruled for centuries, but now their strength seemed fragile, threatened by the very humans they had dismissed as weak. His heart sank as the latest reports came in. His daughter was not just an ally of the humans. She had chosen them. She had rejected the empire, the kingdom, and his authority. For the first time in his life, King Vorthak felt like a man who had lost control. He had traded his daughter to secure a future for his people, but now he realized he had sacrificed her in a way he couldn't undo. He had always been a man of power, but now he faced the painful truth. He had misjudged humanity, and even more so, his daughter. She was no longer the obedient princess he had raised. She was someone else, someone who had chosen a path beyond his reach. He clenched his fists, the weight of his regret pressing down on him like an invisible force. A new alliance. The human compound was now a place of refuge for Sylvera. No longer a prisoner, but not quite one of them, either. She had seen their strength, their resilience, and now she was a part of it, in a way. Still, something gnawed at her, the decision she had made. Had she chosen the right side? Holt approached her later that evening, his expression serious. "We've received word from your father," he said, handing her a small device. "He wants to talk." Sylvera stared at the communication device in her hand. She knew what it meant. Her father had never been one to negotiate. His words were commands, not offers. And now he had to deal with the consequences of his actions. Sylvera knew her decision would have long-lasting effects, but she had to confront him. "Will he try to take me back?" she asked quietly, her fingers gripping the device tightly. Holt's eyes darkened. "I don't know, but if he does, you're not going alone." Sylvera raised an eyebrow. "And if he orders you to fight me?" "Then we'll fight together," Holt replied firmly, his voice full of resolve. Her heart skipped a beat. The words felt like a promise, and for the first time since her arrival on Earth, she felt something beyond duty. She had come to respect the humans, but now she found something deeper, a connection, a bond. "I'm not going back, Jason," she said softly. "I won't let my father use me like that anymore." The king's wrath. In the Selvani court, Vorthak's decision was final. He couldn't let his daughter defy him without consequences. The pride of the Selvani had been wounded. His daughter's rebellion was an insult to everything he had built, and he would make sure she understood that. "Prepare a fleet," Vorthak ordered his generals. "We're going to Earth." The room was silent, and his advisors exchanged nervous glances. The humans were strong, yes, but an invasion, a full-on attack would lead to war, and Vorthak knew that. The Empire's strength had been eroding for years, but even now, a battle with the humans would be costly. "We cannot afford another war," one of his generals spoke up hesitantly. Vorthak's gaze turned cold, his voice low and menacing. "If we do not take her back, then we lose everything, and I will not allow that." His mind was made up. He would take his daughter back by force if he had to, and no one, not even the humans, would stand in his way. The final decision. The human base was tense as word came in of the Selvani fleet mobilizing. Sylvera knew it was coming, but part of her was still unprepared. She had chosen Earth, but the choice she had made now demanded a greater sacrifice. Her life, her future, and perhaps the future of both humanity and her people. The time for talking was over. It was time for action. Holt approached her again, this time his voice serious. "If your father comes here, what do we do?" Sylvera took a deep breath, looking out at the horizon. She had made her choice. She had chosen humanity. But now she needed to make sure they knew she wasn't going to back down. "If my father comes," she said slowly, her voice steady with resolve, "we fight. And we win." Holt nodded. "Then we fight." And with that, the course was set. That Exelvani would come for her, but this time they would face a united front. The news came fast, and it was unmistakable. The Scifi fleet was headed straight for Earth, advancing with frightening speed. The humans, already on alert, scrambled into action, readying their defenses. But Scifi couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. Her father's wrath was not something to be taken lightly. The king of the Scifi didn't just send ships. He sent an entire fleet. Scifi stood in the command center of the human base, watching the holographic display of the fleet's course. Commander Jason Holt was already at the helm, his mind sharp and focused. Around them, soldiers and officers moved quickly, preparing for the worst. "What do we do?" Scifi asked, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. The moment had finally arrived, and the consequences were clear. She had chosen this path, but would it lead to victory or destruction? Holt turned to her, his expression calm but serious. "We fight, and we win." The Scifi approach. Far from Earth, within the heart of the Scifi fleet, King Vorthak stood in his war chamber, staring at the vast, starry expanse before him. His fleet, made up of the finest warships in the galaxy, was ready. Every ship had been prepared for this moment, the moment he would reclaim what was his. "Send a message to Earth," Vorthak ordered, his voice cold. "Tell them that Scifi is returning with us. No one will stop us." His fleet was massive, and their weaponry was far beyond anything humanity could hope to match. Yet despite the strength of his empire, a seed of doubt began to form in the king's mind. He had lost his daughter once to the humans. Would he lose her again? No, he thought. This time, she would come back to him. A call to action. The human base was bustling as everyone took their assigned positions. The energy shields around the base were being activated, and the defense systems hummed to life. Human technology was not as advanced as the Scifi's, but the humans had one thing that Scifi could not match: ingenuity. They adapted, learned, and survived. Commander Holt addressed the team, his voice full of determination. "The Scifi are coming. We're not just protecting this base. We're protecting Scifi. We're protecting what we believe in. Everyone, take your positions. The time is now." Scifi stood in the background, watching the humans as they worked together with unwavering unity. They weren't just preparing for a battle. They were preparing for a fight for their future. She had chosen to stand with them, and now she would fight to prove that her choice had been the right one. The fleet arrives. Moments later, the sky above Earth darkened as the Scifi fleet entered Earth's atmosphere. Their ships were enormous, black, sleek, and built for battle. The humans, no strangers to war, looked up with a mixture of awe and determination. The tension in the air was palpable. "We'll need all hands on deck for this," Holt said, his tone serious as he looked at the massive ships descending. "They're bringing everything they've got." Sylvera's heart raced as she saw the Scifi ships closing in. Her father was aboard one of those ships. But it wasn't just her father. This was a galaxy-spanning war that could change the course of history, and it was her choice that had brought it to this point. First shots fired. The first blast came without warning. A Scifi warship fired a barrage of energy weapons at the human base. The shield generators flared up, absorbing the energy. But the force of the blast rocked the base. "We've got incoming," one of the human officers shouted, scrambling to activate countermeasures. "Prepare for defense. All units, engage." The battle had begun. Human ships launched from the base, their cannons firing rapidly at the oncoming Scifi ships. Scifi stood in the control room, watching the battle unfold. She could feel the intensity of the fight, the raw power of the Scifi weapons colliding with the determined force of humanity. The Scifi ships were bigger, stronger, and faster than anything Earth had ever seen, but the humans fought back with unmatched resolve. Every human soldier knew that this wasn't just about winning. It was about survival. The moment of truth. As the battle raged on, Scifi stood at a crossroads. She had made her choice long ago, but now, in the heat of the moment, she had to prove to herself and to the humans that she was not just a princess. She was a warrior. Holt approached her, his expression fierce. "We need you to coordinate with the fleet," he said urgently. "We need your knowledge of the Scifi ships. You know their systems better than anyone else." Sylvera nodded, stepping forward. This was her fight. She had learned so much from the humans. Their courage, their willpower, their adaptability. And now, she would use all that she had learned to help them. With her guidance, the humans were able to exploit weaknesses in the Scifi fleet's shield systems, allowing them to strike back with precision. The tide of the battle began to shift. The Scifi fleet, once so powerful and unstoppable, was beginning to fall back. A father's realization. Back in the heart of the Scifi fleet, King Vorthak stared at the holographic display in disbelief. His ships were taking heavy damage, and the humans were fighting back with unbelievable skill. It was clear now. His daughter's decision had caused a ripple effect far beyond what he had anticipated. She was not the same princess he had raised. The realization hit him harder than any battle could. She was a leader. She was a warrior. And she had chosen humanity. The final strike. As the battle reached its peak, Sylvera stood beside Holt, her heart racing. The Scifi flagship was within range. One final strike would end this fight. The humans had their weapons locked on the flagship, but Sylvera knew that the Scifi fleet wasn't going to back down without a fight. "Do it," Sylvera said, her voice steady. "Destroy it." Holt nodded, and with that, the final barrage was launched. Energy beams streaked across the sky, piercing the flagship's shield. The flagship trembled as the blasts hit. Explosion after explosion rocked the Scifi ship. It was clear. The battle was over. The battlefield was silent. The air, once filled with the roar of weapons, was now still, save for the distant hum of energy shields still flickering in the distance. The Scifi fleet had been forced to retreat. The human defenses, though greatly outmatched, had won the battle. But this was more than a fight for survival. It was a fight for identity, for purpose, and for the future. Sylvera stood on the observation deck of the human base, watching as the last of the Scifi ships vanished into the blackness of space. The victory felt bittersweet. Her father had been defeated, but at what cost? Her decision had changed everything, and she now found herself at the heart of a future she had never imagined. Commander Jason Holt stepped up beside her, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "We did it," he said quietly. "We won." But Sylvera didn't respond right away. She had made her choice when she stood with humanity, but now, after the battle, the weight of that choice was heavier than ever. The king's last attempt. In the dark silence of space, King Vorthak sat in his private chamber aboard the Scifi flagship. His fleet was retreating, but the sting of defeat cut deeper than any weapon could. His people were not just losing a battle, they were losing a way of life, and more painfully, they were losing his daughter, the one person who was supposed to help lead them to victory. He leaned forward, his expression harsh and cold. His mind raced as he thought back to the moment he had offered Sylvera to the humans. He had believed they were weak, that they couldn't possibly challenge the might of the Scifi Empire. But now, he realized the truth. Humans were not just powerful. They were adaptable, and they could do what the Scifi never could, unite across differences. He clenched his fists. He couldn't let her go, not without trying one more time to bring her back to the Empire. The choice to fight for her was his, and he had to bring her back by any means necessary. "Prepare the fleet for another approach," Vorthak ordered, his voice now filled with determination. "We will not retreat. We will reclaim our future." Sylvera's decision. Back on Earth, the days following the battle were filled with a mixture of celebration and uncertainty. The humans had triumphed, but there was no victory without sacrifice. The damage to the base was severe, and many lives had been lost. Yet, even in the face of destruction, there was a sense of hope. The humans had proved their strength, and in doing so, had given Sylvera a new path to walk. She stood at the edge of the base's landing platform, looking out at the horizon. The stars above seemed brighter than they ever had before, and for the first time, she felt like she truly belonged. She had made her decision when she stood against her people. But now, faced with the reality of her actions, she felt the full weight of the consequences. Her father would not stop. He would keep fighting until he had taken her back, or until he had destroyed everything in his path. "What are you going to do?" Jason's voice brought her back from her thoughts. She turned to face him. "I have to stop him. He won't stop until he has me back. He believes this is his only chance to save the Empire, but in truth, he is just trying to hold on to what is slipping away." Jason took a step closer, his eyes searching hers. "You don't have to do this alone." "I know," she said softly, "but this is my fight now. I can't let him destroy everything we've built together. I won't go back to the life I had before." The last confrontation. The humans had prepared for the next step. Sylvera knew the time had come. She could no longer be a passive observer in the conflict between her people and humanity. She had made her choice, and now she had to ensure that it was not just her decision, but the future of both species. The Sylvani fleet reappeared in Earth's orbit, its ships glinting coldly against the stars. Sylvera's heart skipped a beat as she saw her father's flagship among them. "This is it," Jason said, standing beside her. "Are you ready?"